Hi everyone, and welcome to week 5. We're going to actually do a couple interesting things this week. The first is we're going to start to process some binary files. So I want to actually kind of walk through that process for you. It's a little bit different than the text files that we've been dealing with, and it kind of folds right into what we're trying to accomplish this week. So when we're dealing with binary files, they typically can be very large. And if they are, we have to basically read them into our system in chunks. Now you can make the chunks really small or really large, since we have systems that, today have 8, 16, 32, 64 gigabytes of memory. We can take in fairly large files, but it's still a good idea to basically bring these in at a chunk at a time. So this first script that I'm going to show you is really simple. All it's going to do is read in a chunk at a time from a binary file that I've provided you. And what it's going to do is it's going to read in that chunk and it's going to print out that chunk. But in printing out the chunk, it's going to print it out in hex for us, because that's what we typically look at binary information in. It's in hex. And you can do some fancy things to basically show hex and ASCII and a bunch of other things. But we're just going to basically, for this simple example, use a library within Python called hexlify. And we're using the bin ASCII library, and from that bin ASCII library we're going to basically import just the one function. Remember, we can, within Python libraries, we could bring in the entire library, or I can bring in just a single module or a single function. In this case, I'm going to use hexlify. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say from bin ASCII import hexlify. I'm going to set my chunk size. In other words, how many bytes of data do I want to read in at a time? In this case, I've chose 40. I could choose whatever I wanted there, but I just chose 40. And now I'm going to go ahead and open the file. And you notice I'm going to do something a little different here. I'm going to read the file in as binary. So I have to basically tell the open function that I want to open this file for reading, but I want to open it in binary mode. So I can't write to this file. I can only read, because I'm using the R option for read and the B option for binary. So anything after I do the open that happens within the indent, that file will remain open and available. Once I leave the indent, in other words, once I hit the break and get out of the script, it'll automatically close the file for me. So I'm going to open the file. I'm going to open it as a file, binary file. So that's the name of the file, test.jpg, and I'm going to use the variable or object binary file in order to be able to access the content of the file. We did this with text files, but I'm just kind of walking through this kind of slow. So now here's the part that's a little tricky. How am I going to know when I'm at the end of file? Well, it turns out that we can determine that if we get data back from the file, then we know that we have more data. Otherwise, we don't. So in this case, I'm going to just say while true. So I'm going to stay in this loop forever unless I hit a break. So in this particular case, I'm going to say while true. I'm going to say give me a chunk. So chunk equals binary file.read. I'm going to read the contents, and I'm going to read the number of bytes that I've specified here, in this case 40. If I have a chunk, in other words, if I got data back from that file read operation, I'm going to go ahead and print hexlify chunk. So it's going to take that chunk of binary data and it's going to turn it into a hex string and output it for me. If I don't have, in this particular case, if I don't get any data back for whatever reason, because I've reached the end of file, it's going to hit the break and we're going to exit our script. And actually, to do this correctly, I should probably say print script ended. And then we'll know that the file is actually have been completed, and now the file is closed because we've actually exited that with open section of the code within Python. Okay.